In addition to being a bad bee with a law degree, I'm a bad bee with a sociology degree and an anthropology minor. I'm a lawyer, I'm a legal consultant, I'm an outspoken women's advocate, right? I'm also a lover of history, in particular American history, because if you don't understand where you're coming from, and if you don't understand the mistakes of the past, you are doomed to repeat them. In looking at American history, I really love to examine the way that enslaved Black people in America in particular freed themselves from slavery, right? And I read through the historical accounts and narratives of enslaved Black people who fled to the North. So they fled to northern free states, or they fled to, as far as Canada, and some even fled south to Mexico and Central America to escape the bondage of slavery, right? Because they understood inherently where the white patriarchal supremacist society had them in terms of hierarchy and in terms of social standing, right? I also examine women's suffrage, particularly white women's suffrage in American history. And I've made the connection before that white women's suffrage began picking up steam around the same time that widespread calls for abolition became mainstream, right? Thinking 1830s, 1840s, and onwards, right? And again, I'm generalizing for the sake of this observation. So after making these connections, after making these observations, after reading these historical accounts and narratives, my question then becomes, why weren't white women who were subject to the same patriarchal oppression that enslaved Black people were subject to, why weren't white women running north to freedom with enslaved Black people? Why didn't white women hitch their wagon to enslaved Black people and take up their cause with them? Because after all, white women were being oppressed by the same white men, right? Right? White women were being oppressed under the bondage and the yoke of patriarchal supremacy by virtue of their gender, where even though they were white, they were still women, right? So why didn't white women go take up cause with enslaved Black people and say, let's just go and do this together. Let me hitch my wagon to yours and let's go be free together in the land of the free, somewhere in far away from this white patriarchal man oppression. Why didn't white women do that? I know the answer, and you know the answer too. The answer is the same reason why white women today vote for Donald Trump and vote for politicians like him, even when those politicians are woman-hating men who are extremely sexist, bigoted, misogynistic, and patriarchal in their legislation, and they actively enact policies that harm all women, including white women. It's the same reason why today poor white people take up league with politicians like Donald Trump rather than hitching their wagons to the social justice movements of other minorities and other poor people as well. And instead vote for politicians like Donald Trump, who are billionaires, not just by virtue of being billionaires, but they're born into generational wealth. They won't even wipe their ass with the flannel shirts that you buy at Walmart. Yeah, it's the same reason. What most white people understand and what they abide by is ultimately the fact that white supremacy takes precedence over all other matters. Maintaining supremacy of the white race, maintaining supremacy of whiteness above all else matters more than anything, matters more than any issues of class solidarity, matters more than any advancements towards gender-related improvements in legislation and advocacy. White supremacy first and foremost, everything else falls behind. Listen also to the white Trump supporters who are now saying things like, I regret my vote for Donald Trump. Listen to what they're saying and listen just as closely to what they're not saying, because they're not saying, I should have voted for Kamala Harris instead. They're not saying, I regret voting for Donald Trump. I should have voted for the Harris-Walz ticket instead. They're not saying that. The only reason why they're publicly saying they regret voting for Donald Trump is because Donald Trump's policies are harming them directly. They were banking on Donald Trump's policies only harming people whom they hate. But now that those policies are harming them, now they're in this quandary. They're battling with themselves where they have to ask themselves, is white supremacy really what I want to focus on? Is this really going to take precedence and, be above my own well-being and be above my health and be above my safety as well? They're basically having an identity crisis, living under Trump Volume 2. That's all that this is. They're having an...
Hey, what's up, everyone? How are you doing? I'm hoping that you are doing great from wherever you're watching this video from. I'm hoping that you are fine. Now, this woman, actually I don't know her name, how I wish I knew. She reveals something so much important. And she revealed how sometimes you think that white people are great. They are cowards. They are a group of people that cannot stand for themselves, but they have the guts to oppress other people because they feel oppressed. And there's this problem. I'll term it as a virus, quotes and quotes. And the virus is white supremacy. You want to be great to the extent that you are oppressed, but then you are okay because there is somebody down below you. Because look, according to history, when you get to check history, it's true. White women suffered under patriarchy. It is the patriarchy that that's some things that were being done to them, which is still part of history. And since they saw that black people were below the strata, it was okay for them to be there because at the end of the day, they were above somebody. And you look at how this is diabolical. So it had to take like 400 years for black people to retain their freedom so that black people can start fighting for their freedom. This is white women. Black people fought for their freedom. And this shows their mediocrity. This shows how fearful these people are. They don't have the guts to stand for themselves, but they have the guts to oppress other people because according to them, those people are below the social strata. And that's how crazy it is. So when you ask the problem and where the problem comes from, white women are still the problem. White women are the problem because they at least could have chosen not to follow that path and say that, you know what, we are not following what all these white men have been doing to us. At least let's stand with black people. And this shows you all that you cannot survive without black people. Because if it weren't for black people, you could have still been in that type of special type of enslavement. It is a special type of enslavement because you are okay that, okay, you can do whatever you want to do with me. At the end of the day, I can do whatever I want to do with a black person. And that's how these folks believed. So when we try to look at the contributions that black people have brought, there's so many contributions that we can look into. Brothers and sisters, I'm going to let you watch this video. As you know, I'm your host and presenter, Eugene Stories. And thank you for always tuning in. Let's learn. Let's learn. So brothers and sisters, I'm going to be back.
Identity crisis. And let them have their identity crisis in peace. Go in peace. Be at peace. Because the rest of us who voted for that lady, aka Vice President Kamala Harris, we were under no illusion of exactly what would happen under Trump Volume 2 because we have the DNA stored in our cells of basically cellular memory of what our enslaved ancestors lived under. We also didn't buy into that stupid-ass, dumbass rhetoric from the internet activists and the armchair revolutionaries, as I call them, who said that, voting for the lesser evil isn't good anyway, and we shouldn't have to abide by a system. Listen to me. We are black people. We are descendants of enslaved people. We have always had to choose between one evil and one lesser evil anyway. That's quite literally the entire... That makes up the entirety of our history here in the Americas, here in America, here in Latin America, the Caribbean, Central America, South America. We've always had to choose between one evil and one lesser evil anyway. We've had to be very pragmatic about our decisions and our choices anyway. So that argument always fell flat on people who think realistically. But back to what I was saying, please understand and accept that for white people, maintaining white supremacy takes precedence even over their own lives, even over their own safety, their own well-being. Doesn't matter. It takes precedence. This is why you did not see poor white people get up and partake in rebellions en masse throughout the history of slavery in the United States, despite the fact that poor white people were too poor to enjoy any of the fruits of slave-holding systems and economies here in America. That's why. Because at the end of the day, even though they were poor, they were still white. And as a result of that, that meant that any other person who was not white was beneath them by default. Foreign people of color who immigrate to America and who are so comfortable absorbing America's white patriarchal supremacy towards Black American people do so because white American supremacy fuels the existing anti-Black prejudice that many foreigners have in their home/native countries. Like the existing anti-Blackness in their native country, culture, community is the fire itself, right? Then they come to America, and American white patriarchal supremacy is gasoline to that fire. It just stokes it, it fuels it, it encourages it to burn brighter and bigger and stronger and hotter. And where foreign people of color, particularly first generation and second generation immigrants, where they ultimately fail is they deliberately fail to accept and understand that white patriarchal supremacy is nothing more than a seductress. It's nothing more than a snake oil. It's nothing more than a thin breath of air, a thin sheet of air that you can see through. It's a smoke screen, right? They come here and they think that racist white Americans are kind to them or nice to them because they're not Black, right? And they fail to understand that racist white Americans who are looking to enforce and uphold white patriarchal supremacy assess foreign people of color the way that a crocodile assesses a gazelle, the way that a lion assesses a gazelle. That assessment is not one of admiration. Okay, so foreign people of color think that they're the model minority because white people admire them and respect them. No, they don't. Racist white people who believe in white patriarchal supremacy are apex predators. They're assessing your ability to help them uphold and uplift white patriarchal supremacy by deliberately severing you and basically cutting you off from the ability to believe that you should connect and partner and advocate with and alongside Black American people. Using this analogy I created specifically, the way that a crocodile or the way that a lion assesses a gazelle is the way that a predator assesses a prey. That assessment is not one based on admiration. It's based on how can this prey fulfill my needs as a predator, right? That is exactly what white Americans do when white patriarchal supremacist Americans tell minorities that, oh, well, you have such a good, strong work ethic. And yeah, you guys come here and immigrate and you don't ask for handouts. You don't ask for supplemental assistance. You don't ask for benefits. You know, you're not lazy. You're looking to work and achieve the American dream, right? Unlike those other Blacks. You see, Black people have all this opportunity around them too. They're just lazy and violent. They're not taking advantage of it, but you are. And the racist white Americans telling you that you should pride yourself on the fact that you don't rely on handouts, those same white Americans receive food benefits. They're on SNAP. Okay, they receive EBT assistance, they receive housing assistance, they receive cash assistance, they have tax exempt statuses for their property taxes on their homes, they've received bankruptcy protection in the past, they've been eligible for government loans like PPP loans that were ultimately forgiven. They proudly take advantage of student loans to go to university and things like that. They take full advantage of every single form of assistance or benefits that American society offers to its residents and to its citizens, while demonizing Black American people who take advantage of those same systems, and then also in the same breath, in the same demonization, telling you silly, empty-headed foreigners that you're better than the rest because you don't take advantage of those same benefits in that same system. And don't try to argue with me either. If you are a foreign person of color, don't try to argue with me because I am also a former foreigner. I'm a naturalized US citizen and I talk openly about how my family is from Jamaica and I'm Jamaican born. I'm a mixed race Jamaican Black woman. I'm speaking from lived personal anecdotal experience that is fortified by my education and by my professional exposure and experience. Foreign people of color have this innate sense of supremacy sometimes, where we tend to believe that our experience with Western imperial colonialism has primed us and prepared us for whatever racism white Americans will give when we enter America's borders. So we tell ourselves that, well, oh yeah, you think Black people have it bad here? Back in our country, the British Empire was doing XYZ, and the Spanish Empire was doing XYZ to us, and the Portuguese Empire had their feet on our necks, da 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 da. So it becomes this sense of competition rather than camaraderie. And anytime you sit there telling yourself that you are the expert on a topic and that no one can fool you and that no one can pull the wool over your eyes and that no one can try to mistreat you or try to teach you anything new about a particular subject or field or personal lived experience, you open the door to being taken advantage of by an apex predator like a racist white person who subscribes to white patriarchal supremacy, American edition. Something else foreign people of color also fail to acknowledge that Black American people have in terms of a gift is that, using my own family as an example, right? So something that is common in foreign families and households is that when you do come to America, if you're going to college, the only acceptable universities to attend are Ivy Leagues. And outside of Ivy Leagues, maybe like the T14, the top 14 universities and colleges in the country, according to US News and World Report. So if you can't get into Harvard, then you can only go to Stanford, or you can only go to UCLA, or you can only go to NYU. Those are the only universities or colleges where you can get an education that is worthy and valuable. Going to any other university or college is not acceptable in our communities and our families, right? Our parents and our grandparents and our aunts and uncles will tell us that you can only be a doctor, engineer, or lawyer. There are no other professions that you can pursue, right? And foreign people of color wholeheartedly, absolutely absorb that and believe that because it gives them a false sense of superiority, specifically over Black American people. So in my own family, for example, my mom growing up knew that I wanted to be a lawyer. So the expectation was, well, you're going to go to Harvard Law School because that's the only acceptable, worthwhile law school to go to. As if there are not thousands of other accredited law schools throughout the entire country who prepare attorneys and lawyers who go on to be extraordinarily successful in their particular fields or industries, right? But that's the expectation, that these lazy Americans here who are here don't take advantage of it, so we will take advantage of it and show them how it's done, right? See, racist white Americans who buy into white patriarchal supremacy, what they do to foreigners, and like I said before, is this effort of seduction. You come here to this country and a racist white person points to a beacon in the sky and will tell you, that's the standard. That's what you should do. That's what you should be like. That's the American dream, right? But they do not show you the process or the steps to achieve that. They just say that is the standard and there is no other standard. There are no other expectations. So there are no colleges or universities worth attending that are not Ivy Leagues. There are no professions that are worth you pursuing that is not being a doctor, lawyer, or engineer. And foreign people of color accept that as like objective fact and truth. And do you know what Black American people do? They can say, come here, let me tell you something. This is America. Most people who will be making hiring decisions are going to be white. So you need to manage your expectations about exactly how successful you will be. Yeah, get your education. Yes, go to school, get your degrees, get your certification, have your goals and everything. But be very realistic about how you're going to achieve those goals. Because at the end of the day, none of us are white. Black American people are the ones who showed my family that no, if your daughter wants to be a lawyer or an attorney, she doesn't need to go to no goddamn Ivy League. That's overly expensive. It's the same degree, it's the same education. She can go to a state school right within where you live that's closer to home and that offers a more competitive scholarship anyway because she's a smart kid who tests well. That's what Black American people will do because Black American people have been here for 400 years. Right? Black American people don't go to foreign people's countries and tell those foreigners how they should live under the remnants of colonialization, right? But foreigners come to America and try to dictate how Black people should and should not live through and experience the remnants of slavery, as if Black American people are not the authorities in that field. So white people show you and point to you and tell you this is the standard, but they don't show you or guide you or show you the process or the inner workings of how to achieve that standard. Black American people will all the time. They will give you the cheat code and will give you exactly what you need to get ahead. But foreign people of color don't want to listen to Black people, and that's why they suffer.
Hello, brothers and sisters. Today, I'm gonna be talking about white women. Yep, white women. I got no problem with white women, but let's be accountable. Let's call them out, right? For probably the things that they have done. Now, white women still overwhelmingly went out and voted for Mr. Donald Trump, even though they understand what he has subscribed to. It is so crazy that majority of the problems that Americans are going through right now, especially white Americans, are a couple of things that they could just solve by just doing this. It can be so much easy for them to solve that by doing that. But hey, look, they cannot do that because they think that there is something that they lose when they lose the white supremacy. Because they have commodified white supremacy and they have taken it as something which is so much important. They don't see that there is a group of people that have been enslaved for so many years. But then, even with those 400 years of enslavement, black people still came and changed the rules. Because the things that black people have fought for are things that are benefiting white women. Should I count it for you? Affirmative action. Yes. These are things that civil rights movements like Malcolm X went out for the streets to fight for. But hey, look, who is it benefiting? It is benefiting a white woman, but more than it's benefiting a black woman or black people generally. So what does that mean? A person will vote against their own interest just because they value the ideology of white supremacy. They value it so much to the extent that they are not ready to let it go. Why do I call this a special type of enslavement? It is a modern type of enslavement. You are a slave to your ideology rather than conforming to something that will help you. You trying to see the problems that has been caused by this group of people. And you ask yourself, at the end of the day, is it worth it for black people to go on the streets, do all these things that they are doing? Black people had to come from so many bad things, but still come and do great things. They still come and outshine you in everything that you do. They still come and show you that they can invent, that they can put structures that benefit all these people. The civil rights movement. All these folks are benefiting from this. Black people had to come from the back bench, back, when all along you had the opportunity of making the right decision, but you were not bold enough to do that. Nothing makes me happy seeing black people, educated black people, intellectual black people. Because now, that the group of people that the United States wants, they'll call out things the way they are. They'll call out America for what it's doing. And I'm thankful for this woman for doing great thing. Somebody's saying that she is correct. They're not saying white supremacy is wrong, or misogyny, xenophobia, or hatred of any type is wrong. They just want the pain to go away. Trump is taking their stuff and they are suffering, but they started this ball rolling and they need to help it to stop it. And we aren't willing to do so. Democrats and Republicans are responsible, as well as the ruling class in America. They are afraid of the overall success economically of black Americans. So they bring immigrants into black American neighborhoods and give them businesses and loans and government support, educational opportunities. The majority of black Americans didn't know this, neither did I, but we saw this every day. So I'm very, very happy it blew up in their faces. I'm sorry. Whiteless tax-paying Americans and immigrants are hurt as the result of racism that permeates the reality of our existence in this country. Black Americans have never been fooled by the Democratic Party. For us, they are the lesser of the two evils. This is the only reason most black Americans vote democratically. That's the only reason as to why black Americans vote democratically. So I don't know if you understand the stance where all this is coming from. I think black people should not be surprised by this. And because remember when I said this, I said that there is this virus, and the virus is white supremacy. A person is able to do things that harm them, but let them maintain their image of greatness, because they don't want that to go. That's their one fear. That's one thing that they don't want to go. So because of this fear, they cannot let it happen. It is a perfect example with so many white Americans, white poor Americans, poor white Americans that are always voting against their own interest. But why? Because of white supremacy. The white supremacy is making these people vote against their own interest. So when you see all these things happening, it damn makes sense to you that you need to understand, that you need to learn, that you need to see that all of these things have been happening for a reason. Because they chose not to fight a fight that will help them. They choose a fight that will make them look great. It's like a person who is buying an expensive car, not because they want it. It's because they want to be seen with it. But at the end of the day, they're the ones who will be drowning in debt. And this is just a perfect example of white Americans. Poor white people vote against their own interest. Because of what? Because of white supremacy. Because they want to maintain an image that doesn't pay their bills, an image that doesn't benefit them. Same as these white women. The white women that, even though they were in the midst of patriarchal society, they were okay. Because at the end of the day, they are white women. They are greater than black people. That's how the hierarchy made it look like. And that's how it's going out there. So brothers and sisters, I really want to know what you think about this video. And as you know, I'm your host and presenter Jindok Stories. But until then, I'm hoping to see you on my next video. Peace, love, and harmony. Salute.